Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me how. Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, let's do it now. Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, you're the one that makes fishing so much fun. Well, I woke up this morning and I headed for my pond. Meet Mr. Pond Boss, yeah, we're gonna chase the sun. Fired up old Spartan, show where the living breed. Hey, Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what I need.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss. Wednesday. Looks like Dennis Backshees loves this song. Hey, Philip Wildman wrote that song and performed it. Dick Tabert's on board. Welcome, guys. It's Wednesday, 6:30. Time for the Pond Boss to be live on Facebook. Now, of course, one of the things that's pretty cool about this is after we do this show every Wednesday, I always get a handful of people that are asking questions thinking that it's still live. But it's not at that point. Right now it is. So, be sure and check the time, and that way you'll know if we're live or if we're Memorex. So, hey, Pond Boss Magazine comes out every other month. I'll get my commercial knocked out real quick. $35 a year. I took Debbie to lunch today. Cost $40. $40. That lunch will be gone tomorrow. Pond Boss lives for a year at $35. Seriously, we'd love to have you join us and become part of the Pond Boss family. You know, we're the Pond Boss family is not just a magazine. It's this. You know, it's this Facebook Live broadcast. It's the Pond Boss website, the Pond Boss forum. It's you guys participating. I mean, it's Daniel McWhorter checking in every Wednesday. Don't you have anything better to do? Oh, I know you don't. We're going to hang out with me. I love it. Brian Lawrence, good to see you. Now, I know there's several guys that have already checked in, and as soon as it comes up on my laptop, then I'll acknowledge you guys too. But today, I want to talk about aquatic plants. Aquatic plants. You know, I think that aquatic plants get a pretty bad rap sometimes. You know, and I come from an aquaculture background. I come from a fish farming background. You know, in a fish farm, you really don't want any plants. But on a fish farm, you're raising one species of fish. You know, and so that ain't always what you want. You know, and in these recreational fishing ponds, we got multiple species, different size fishes, different, different species, different, game fish, bluegill, the whole bit. So let me see here. I'm going to acknowledge a few folks and make sure I can see who's on here. Holy cow, good gosh. Jason Nepstad, put a little wave up there. Hey, Jason. John Mikulik from Lake Vilbig. Brian Lawrence said hello. Sheridan Ashmore. Dennis Backshees is my son-in-law. I'm glad he's on here. Brian Lawrence said hello. Daniel McWhorter, plants. Cool. Good evening. I love that. John Fitzgerald. Hey, John. I think you sent in a question on the Pond Boss Forum. By the way, for you guys to get the information that you need, not only do you need to subscribe to Pond Boss because that fuels the economy. Last week I had a guy get a little snippy with me after the show when he was late to the hunt about a sales pitch. Here's my sales pitch. Pond Boss Magazine, 6 times a year, $35, well worth it. Lots of nuggets. You guys chime in and help me sell this a little bit. Now he was getting on to me a little bit about making a sales pitch. My sales pitch is to try to convince you to pay a little bit for a whole lot of knowledge. That's all I'm trying to do, because what I'm doing here is just free. So let's see here. We got Dave Weber from Northeast Kansas. Colin Pearson. Hey, you know what, Dave? We got a very cool story in the July-August issue about a family that bought a farm, a corn farm. Believe it or not, come on. They're in northern Kansas, and they have got an outstanding story about what they did to build a lake and then a series of ponds above it. It's great. Let's see, Colin Pearson, Mike Cottrell. Let's see, Daniel McWhorter, golf Saturdays and Tuesdays in a minimum. Okay, well, so Wednesdays you're going to spend with me. I love it. Let's see here, Leanne Harsel, Skipworth. Leanne is our marketing director. She wants us to send your name and address. If you want a sample copy of the magazine, just put your name and address in this thread, and she will send you a sample copy. Kevin Briggs, good to see you, buddy. Jeff Gaxiola from Chakota. Jim Liner, got to see Jim Liner last week over there in Montgomery, Alabama. Got to spend a little bit of time. We had a big time. Nate Herman. Hey, Nate, I want you to be a guest on this show before long. I'll be hollering at you about that. And I want to really talk about some of the things that you guys have done over there in Illinois. Cooper Wilson, good to see you, Cooper. You know, what I wanted to do today is just talk about aquatic plants. And I think aquatic plants oftentimes get a pretty bad rap. You know, because people look at aquatic plants as moss or algae, and heck, you know, maybe they're not the greatest thing on the planet. Well, I'm going to tell you, I think every successful fisheries that I manage, aquatic plants play a role. All right, Nate says he's in. Let's do this. All right, let's talk about Nate. I will call you and let's set some things up because you've done some pretty cool stuff, especially with your Lake Life TV show, you know, and Giant Goose Ranch. We need to talk about all that. And I'm ready to come see you. I need to just carve out some time and go up there and see you because I want to see some of the cool stuff you and your family have done. Clint Loveday, there we go. All right, so I think today what I want to do is just kind of go through some different types of aquatic plants and just give you kind of some of the fundamentals of aquatic plants and what they mean. Aquatic plants are necessary, I think, in my opinion, for a successful fishing lake. Dick Tabbert says, I'm a little shy with plants, so afraid they will take over, except my pond does get deep fast, except the old beach area. Okay, well, that's fair. I like that. Let's see now. Okay, Buffy Boudreaux Smith. Okay, you got to help me remember what your name really is because you're doing your wife's Facebook page. Hey, get a Facebook page. I have a new 1 acre pond that I dug last October. As it filled, it slowly killed the pasture grass around the edges as the water rose, leaving little or no vegetation. What is taking over along the edges now is torpedo grass. Since the fry needs something to be able to hide in and escape predation and has already made a couple of pretty large mats along the bank, I'm glad it's there and providing some cover. However, I understand that it can get out of hand rather quickly. How much should I let it grow before I get concerned and do something about it? Zachary, Louisiana. Okay, you know what? I'll tackle that in a minute. Now, here's what I want to do first. Now, remember, if you will, hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments, click like, and share this video to your timeline so we can build a bigger audience. You will be eligible for a drawing for, drum roll, a Pond Boss hat, pretty cool hat, and a Pond Boss mug. And Leanne probably has a few shirts left. I don't know. She may pitch one of those in depending on what happens. So, I think where we go next is there's basically 3 types of aquatic plants. You've got floating plants. That's things like watermeal, duckweed, azolla. There's a bunch of different plants that float on the water and migrate with the wind and currents. There are immersed or emerged plants and submerged plants. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to hold up a couple of plants, and if you guys know what they are, tell me. Tell me. Type it in right here. Look at this. Here's your first one. What's this? Holy cow. I cut this off of one of my ponds about 30 minutes ago. Tell me. Anybody know what that is? And also, cut this plant. Who knows what that is? Is that any good? Is that a good plant? Tell me. And then I was rooting around a little bit and I found this. What is this? Anybody recognize it? It's an old potato out of the pantry. Throw that one in the trash. It doesn't matter. So, now, we got a whole bunch of other plants I want to talk to you about. But with those basic plants in mind, you've got floating plants, emerged plants, and submerged plants. And in each one of those categories are subcategories. So job number 1, if you've got plants that you think are a problem, job 1 is to go ahead and figure out what they are. Identify your plants. Now there's an outstanding resource out there, aquaplant.tamu.edu. Texas A&M has got an outstanding website where you can start looking up some plants and figure out what it is that you've got. And job 1, if you know what it is, then you can figure out, is it a good plant or a bad plant? You know, good plants are plants that aren't invasive in your pond. They're plants that actually add to the habitat and add to the environment, aesthetically appealing, and just don't invade things. You know, before I really get much further, I want to talk to you about what I call the big three. The big three is what it takes for aquatic plants to grow. In order for plants to grow, you got to have food. So if it's a rooted plant, it gets its food from the mud. If it's a floating plant, it gets its food from the water. If it's an immersed plant, typically it's got roots. If it's got roots, it's getting its food from the dirt. So it's got to have food, it's got to have the right temperature, and it's got to have sunlight. If you'll notice early on in the spring, coming out of the winter, you'll start to see some plants begin to grow before other plants do. That's because they have a different temperature window. So the temperature is a big, big deal on when plants grow. Cattails, you know, coming out of the winter, you always see dead cattails, and then bam, all of a sudden when the water temperature or the soil temperature hits something like 68, bam, they just grow. They grow like crazy. And let's see here, we got, let me see what else we got. Frank James. Hey, Frank, we've got an Aquatic from Southwest Airlines. Oh, and Lake Vilbig. Love Al. Haven't spent enough time with Clint Loveday. Says bulrush. Attaboy. Actually, it's common rush. Bulrush grows, this is common rush. Common rush grows about 3 feet tall, but it looks almost exactly like bulrush. Bulrush grows about 6 or 7 feet tall. So that's good. You're in the right category. Let's see, we got, holy cow, we got a bunch of questions coming on. I'm going to go ahead and give my little spiel and then come back and start answering some of your questions. And I've got a bucket full of plants that I had my guys pick up in the field yesterday and today, and I want to show you some of those. So once you identify your plant, then you got to decide, is it good or is it bad? And if it's a good plant, can you keep it at bay and keep it from becoming invasive? Now, the part of the planet you live on, that is going to help you determine what your native plants are and which ones of those are invasive. Like, for example, right here in where I live in North Texas, Coontail is a native plant. But oh my gosh, that plant is highly invasive. Now, when I'm telling you to identify your plant, that's a big, big deal. I've got a client who's become a friend, who's learned enough about pond management, that he decided he wanted to do his own management, which I'm okay with that. That's fine. So if you're going to do that, you need to get your education up, get your learning curve a little bit more steep. Well, he called me, I don't know, back in March. He says, okay, now when do I need to fertilize my pond to keep the Eurasian water milfoil from growing? So see, now that's kind of a cool water plant, so you need to get a bloom on your lake before the water temperature pops up into the 60s. Well, he calls me 2 weeks late, and he says, okay, you told me to fertilize 2 weeks ago, but I didn't. Can I do it now? I said, dude, you need it. Yeah, go. Is your milfoil growing? He says, yeah, it's kind of starting. I said, get a bloom on it. So he got a little tentative, and he put in about half the dose of fertilizer that I told him to do. Now, this is in a lake near Brownwood, Texas. So he only fertilized at half the rate because he was scared that he was going to mess up his water quality. And I get that. So then he comes back, and he tells me, hey, wait a minute, I don't have a bloom. Do I need to add more fertilizer? Well, how much did you do? Well, he only did half of what I told him to do. So he pumped some more fertilizer in it. Well, by that time, the water temperature's in the mid-60s, and milfoil's growing like crazy. So his milfoil started to grow. Well, now I get a call from him 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago. He says, listen, I have got milfoil growing in 9 feet of water. And I said, wow, you must have really clear water. He says, no, actually, I finally got a plankton bloom, and my plankton bloom is about 3 feet deep. I said, well, no, if you've got a plankton bloom, then the milfoil isn't going to be growing below where the sunlight can penetrate. He says, I'm telling you, when I throw a lure out there, I throw a Texas ringworm out there and pull it back, and it's covered in milfoil. So I said, okay, look, I need to come see what you're doing. So I drove over there Monday morning on my way back home from Austin, Texas, and I popped in, went out in the boat, spent every bit of 15 minutes. He doesn't have milfoil. He's got coontail. Coontail. I've got some in a bucket. Let's see if I can round it up here and show it to you. Holy cow. It's dripping everywhere, folks. I got to keep it off the keyboard. There's coontail. Can you see that? That is coontail. Now, I'm going to show you something else here. Now, I smelled of it because coontail is real similar to Chara. So bear with me here. I'm going to find some more of these plants and share them with you and show you what we got. give you some more close-up so you can see it and get it and understand it. Holy cow, Justin brought me all kinds of stuff here. All right, so now, here is some Chara. Can you tell the difference? Chara smells like a skunk. It's also called skunk grass. It's got a real musty smell to it. So, the point I'm trying to make here is you got to identify the plant. Now, what my good friend over there around Brownwood, Texas, didn't do is he mistook Coontail for Chara, which that's why he missed the whole point. So now we're going to come up with a game plan for him to deal with runaway Coontail because he just didn't know what the plant was. So you got to identify it. Anybody figure out what this stuff is right here? I didn't see anybody type it up. All right, now I want to show you a couple other plants here. Here's another submersed plant. Now this is actually one of my favorite plants right here. I love this plant. I'm going to hold it over a little bucket here. This plant here, that's American Pondweed. It has little seed pods that float and stick up out of the water, and these leaves like this, almost like a willow leaf. See that? That is one of my favorite plants. Now, the reason that American Pondweed is one of my favorite plants is that it doesn't get too dense, it doesn't grow in very deep water, and it's outstanding habitat for periphyton that grows on the leaves. It's outstanding to be habitat for little baby fish to hide. Absolutely love that plant. Okay, now, just to kind of further emphasize identifying plants, anybody know what that is? Look at this one, right there in your living room. What is that one? And let's see here, I got something else in here if I can find it. Oh, here we go. So, can you see the difference? Ooh, I'm going to drip water on my laptop and then I'm going to get in trouble. Okay. By looking at these plants, can you tell the difference between this one and this one? This is Smartweed. This is Alligator weed. Two totally different plants. Justin brought me some, he broke off a lotus leaf, which is about probably a third grown. This is American lotus right there. Y'all seen these pads? They're solid without a V cut in it. Something else that's kind of cool. Here's the beginnings of a seed pod for an American lotus plant. So, here's my point. As I clean up a mess on my laptop, I'm going to get in trouble. So, here's my point. You really need to understand all these different plants so that you can figure out what's good, what's not. And some of these are outstanding plants. So I'm going to go back and tackle some of your questions here real quick. Oh, before I do that though, another thing I wanted to tell you is when you do identify a plant and you want to do something about it to control it, you basically have three different methods of control. The first method is physical control. Let's say around the dock you've got a bunch of coontail and you want to get rid of it. Learn everything you can about coontail or whatever the plant is you've got. American pondweed, leafy pondweed, sago pondweed, milfoil, Eurasian water milfoil, water lettuce, spatterdock. I mean, there are literally hundreds of species of plants, some of which are outstanding plants for your fish and for your water chemistry and for your water quality. So, job one, identify your plants. Three ways to deal with them. There's physical methods that you can use to get rid of plants. Now that might entail hiring the local high school football team, grilling hot dogs and have them take rakes and pull the stuff out and throw it on the pond bank. Well, they'll do that once because it's a lot of work. Now keep in mind that the problem, listen to this is a big deal. The problem is not the plants. The plants are not the problem. The problem is you've got the right kind of water temperature, the food they need, and sunlight. When those three things come together, plants are going to grow. So if you can eliminate one of those big three, then you've actually solved the problem, if plants are a problem. Shallow water is an absolute no-no if you don't really want plants. Now, one of the questions I get all the time is, how much is enough? I think 15 to 20% of surface area of a pond is enough to have aquatic plant growth, as long as you've got good native aquatic plants that are working in harmony together. One species, not good. Diversity of more than one species, outstanding. I'll tell you this, Richmond Mill Pond, Richmond Mill Lake in North Carolina, that is the most harmonious lake I've ever met in my entire life. It's got plant populations in there that ebb and flow. None of them outcompete the others. And it's got everything from bladderwort to a species of spatterdock, which is also called cow lily, that all these plants just interact and work really, really. One of them with a cool name is called snot bonnet. I can't remember the name of it. Somebody will put it up here. But when you pick up one of the little, what looks like lily pads, it's real slick on the bottom. All right, I'm going to scroll down here. I was going to tell you the other methods. Physical methods, which usually is cutting or pulling it out or removing it that way. The second method is biological, which for the most part, that's grass carp. You know, now you got to figure out in your state, are grass carp legal? Do you have to have a permit? And you need to be smart about how you use grass carp. There's certain plants that grass carp will not eat. They won't eat cattails. They can't eat duckweed, but they'll eat pondweed all day long. You know, so you got to pick the right tool to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish, and that includes managing aquatic plants. The third method is using herbicides. You know, in today's world, herbicides are kind of frowned on. There are some herbicides out there that are EPA approved that are contact killers that break down really, really fast. Then there's other herbicides that don't break down so fast. There's some materials out there that are not even chemicals as a herbicide would be. There's some materials out there that the plants can take up and actually disrupt their metabolism and keep them from reproducing. So if you're going to choose chemicals, you need to choose what works best for your situation. And most of the time, they're specific for certain species of plants. Okay, so now I'm going to go back, scroll up through here and see if I can read some of these questions and answer. We're going to go back to Mr. Smith here. Torpedo grass. Since the fry needs something to be able to hide in and escape predation, it's already made a couple of pretty large mats along the bank. I'm glad it's there and providing some cover. However, I understand it can get out of hand rather quickly. How much should I let grow before I should be concerned to do something about it? I'll tell you this. As long as a pond has somewhere in the neighborhood of 30% or less coverage of aquatic plants, that's adequate. It needs, you know, if you're going to expect survival rates of baby fish, then you need something to the tune of 10 to 15% coverage. I think if you have less than that and you're not providing artificial cover, then you ain't getting it. Let's see, Leo says snot bonnet, water shield. Water shield, that's the one I couldn't think of. Attaboy. Cooper Wilson, I've got 2 ponds that in the future I'll be utilizing your knowledge to create mega ponds. Ain't no pressure here. I'll help you do that. I got it. Jim Liner, will the 80-degree plus temperature kill the filamentous algae around our lakes? Yes, it will. Actually, on the Pond Boss forum, www.pondboss.com, click on Ask the Boss. There's an outstanding forum there. John Fitzgerald, who's on here tonight from Elkins, Arkansas, says how to manage filamentous algae and is it always bad? Well, the way I look at filamentous algae starts growing when the water temperature is pretty cool in the springtime. And typically, by this time of year, most of it's gone. Now, I've got some that isn't gone yet on one of my ponds at the house. We've got 8 ponds on 12 acres. I don't like to mow. But we still got some filamentous algae on one pond. Well, typically, that algae will be gone by the time the water temperature is in the mid-80s, or low 80s at least. Now, according to with John's question, is it always bad? No, it's not always bad. I'll tell you this. I've seen lakes in all over the nation where somebody will call me and ask me if they should take care of the algae, knock it out. Well, after I look at a picture of the lake or see the lake or ask them a few more questions, what's going on is some of those algae mats are actually blocking the sunlight off of plants that are going to be more invasive. So in that case, I think algae is a good thing to have because it's keeping other plants from getting out of hand and just growing wild in your pond. So I do think that sometimes algae is good. Now, is it a good cover for fish? No, it's not. Is it good habitat? It really isn't. The life cycle is so fast. It ebbs and flows so quickly. Hey, there's Sydney Goodwin from Arkansas. Hey, Sydney. She says hello. Hello to you. Debbie will be glad you're here. The thing about algae is it doesn't have any nutritional value, really. It doesn't have any habitat value. But the value that it brings is it can block the sun, utilize nutrients early in the spring to keep plants that we might not like at bay. So because of that, I like it. Let's see here. Al Cahutek, I see you back on there, buddy. Clint Loveday, good. Bullrush, yep. Okay, Frank James. Okay, Frank, you had posted a question. And Frank is from around Shreveport, Louisiana, Houghton, Louisiana, south of Shreveport, has a lake in deep East Texas. And on this question he asked, he says, my pond is steep-sided and deep for the most part, so the Chara, muskgrass with the unmistakable odor, muskgrass, Chara, it grows close to the bottom of the pond, typically in mats about a foot thick, typically. And if you pick it up, it feels real crunchy and crispy. If you smell it, it's real musky, like the faint odor of a skunk. It's also called skunk grass. He says the Chara mostly keeps well behaved. However, toward the back, the pond naturally gets shallower, and I see Chara growing down to a good 5 or 6 feet. This means it blocks spawning beds and makes the back bays unfishable other than by topwater lures. Well, I'll tell you this. Chara is not unlike most other plants to where if the sun can penetrate down 4 or 5 feet, it's going to grow. The good thing about Chara is it typically hugs the bottom and grows only about a foot and a half thick. You know, so even though it's growing in 5 feet of water, it's not doing things like some of the other plants like Coontail will do that can be even worse. So one of the things I coach people on is learn about these plants, learn about how they respond, how they react, and then choose. I mean, your job is to learn this stuff. You can't always count on guys like me or Stephen Barden or Nate Herman or you know, any of the other pros out there. Sean Banks with Midwest, you know, Sean McNulty over at American Sportfish. You can't always just count on us to help you make choices. You got to learn this stuff. So the more you learn about these plants, the better decisions you can make. So he says, Frank goes on, he says, overall the Chara covers no more than 20% of the pond. Now that's a big clue right there. That Chara is dense, which makes it outstanding habitat for insects, periphyton, little bitty bait fish, because it's dense. And dense cover is something we need this time of year to protect baby fish. If we can protect our baby fish, then we have a much, much, much better chance in the food chain going into the fall. So he says, this along with smaller patches of American Pondweed, remember that, here's American Pondweed right here. Now look at the stems on this American Pondweed. This stuff is not nearly as dense as Chara. Chara is going to be real dense, where American Pondweed is not so dense. So he says, Pondweed, American Pondweed, cattails, and duck potato seems okay on an overall basis. Little fish need shelter, and now I've got it. Yes, you do. But the ratio of open water to plants isn't 80-20 around the pond. Instead, it's 95-5 for most, 30-70 for the back base. Chara is already up to within a foot of the surface in most of the back base. That's not bad. So if you look at it, if you were to look at the entire pond, you know, what you're saying is the majority of your plants are growing in really shallow water. Good. That's where we want them. Because if those little bitty bait fish go hang out in shallow water, they're much less likely to be eaten before their time. So I actually like having in those upper coves more dense vegetation because that's a nursery. Look at it as a nursery ground for your bait fish. So his question is should I be happy with the overall 80% 20% ratio or take action to reduce the 70% Chara in the back bays? No, leave it. look at the 80-20 because that's what you've got. You've got perfect habitat. And I'll tell you this, if you go kill that Chara, something else is going to take its place and you might not like it. It might be, it might be an invasive bushy pondweed or something like that, which bushy pondweed's native, and I actually kind of like that plant. So would grass carp be a reasonable solution? Well, in order to have a solution, you need a problem. With 80-20 coverage, I don't think that's a problem. I think that is the solution. So I would not pay any attention to trying to deal with those plants. I would leave them alone. Now, if you had a 60-40 ratio of open water to vegetated water, then I would look at it. Stephen Barden joined to say, I just spoke your name, buddy. Just a little promo for you. Texas Pro Lake Management Company. Okay. So he says, so his final thing is, I really don't want to lose the plants in most of the pond, just the shallow water at the back. I would leave those plants alone. And then he says, P.S. I've stocked 150 pounds of tilapia. Tilapia will eat the filamentous algae. That's what they'll do. Let's see here. Now I'm going to tackle another question from the Pond Boss Forum. Here's one from Justin Ludwig. Discuss the habitat benefits of various aquatic plants for fry, young fish, and adults. Well, I'll tell you this. I think it's absolutely critical to have the right kind of habitat. And if you can do that with native aquatic plants, you've hit a home run. Now, the thing about aquatic plants is they ebb and flow. They're going to rise and fall based on their key temperatures of when they can grow. So, to answer your question, I think habitat benefits of aquatic plants are crucial. Like when you take a look at these plants like this American Pondweed, look at this. You see this? There's the bottom of the leaf. It's kind of hard to see on the telephone, but there's the top of the leaf. On the bottom of the leaf, it's kind of hard to see it. Shoot, I'm going to pull it apart so you guys can see it. This is pretty cool. All right, look at this. The bottom of this leaf of this American Pondweed is just covered in periphyton. And it's actually covered in insects too, little bitty tiny insects. So not only does some of these plants, especially like American Pondweed, not only do they supply cover, they also supply some food, maybe not directly for fish, but for some of the things that fish eat. So look at it that way. All right, now I'm going to scroll back up here on my laptop and look at some of these plants. Jurassic Park, can't wait for Pond Boss Conference this year. We have not scheduled a conference yet. Our last conference was a year ago in October, I think it was. And those things are really, really rigorous to put together. So we'll talk about another one, but we got to get higher attendance. Frankly, we do. So let's see. I got into bass and bass fishing because of you, and I thank you, sir. Idaho is so overrun with trout that they're missing out on all the good bass fishing and a lack of bass knowledge. This year I'll be catching my first Texas bass. If it's in Texas, haha, thanks for everything, Bob. Hey, if you want to catch a bass, come to my house. We'll do that. Kevin Briggs, is there a bush that will grow in shallow water to protect small brim and bait fish? Absolutely. You bet. One of my favorite ones are these rushes. I love these. These grow in water maybe 4 or 5 inches deep. This pondweed, this American pondweed right here, great choice. So there's a lot of different kinds of plants. Now, when you say, is there a bush? Now, as I recall, you're in North Carolina, and you sent me a question that I didn't answer because I can't think of the plant. Of course, I've been a little bit busy too. So there are, I'm going to have to dig that up and find it, but there are some plants that are real gnarly, woody plants that grow in those acid waters of North Carolina. One of my favorites is buttonbush. If you don't know what buttonbush is, look it up. That's a great one. If it will grow in your area, that's one of my favorites. Alcahutek, good info. Let's see. Nate Herman, water willow. That water willow is one of my favorite plants. Now, water willow looks a lot like this alligator weed, but here's what's real important is don't confuse the plants. Know the plants. This plant is invasive. It's alligator weed. It looks a lot like water willow, but water willow is an outstanding perimeter plant that grows in water less than a foot deep, maybe even 18 inches deep typically. It's outstanding cover, Kevin Briggs. That's a good one. Look, I love water willow. That's one of my favorite. Mike Rivers, hello. Thomas Davis, Central Texas. John Wilson, Cleveland. Yeah, Al Cahutek says pennywort. There you go. There's pennywort. I plucked that off of one of my ponds today. Pennywort. This grows around the edges. Typically doesn't grow in the water, but what it does is it kind of turns into a vine and then goes out in the water, and little bitty bait fish love to be hiding in it. I just don't like it because it's real invasive sometimes. But it might not be at your place. Shannon Kane, good deal. Dick Tabbert, smells like muck. You smell like muck, or what smells like muck there, Dick? Probably that muskgrass. Let's see, Mike Augustine joined. We've been talking to Mike. He's looking at a piece of property. Hyacinth. Hyacinth is an invasive plant. I wouldn't want anybody to have hyacinth. As a matter of fact, I think in the state of Texas, that if you're caught with water hyacinths, you can be fined up to $10,000. So that's another big deal. You need to learn your plants and what's healthy and good for your environment right there where you live. And in this part of the planet, water hyacinth is not a healthy plant. It's totally invasive. It can completely cover up water. As a matter of fact, if you drive through southern Louisiana right now and see all these beautiful plants out there that you think is a pasture, that's water hyacinth with their pretty little violet flowers on them, just completely covering up waterways. They clog, the water can't move, it blocks sunlight, blocks oxygen, kills fish. Not a good plant. I wouldn't use it. Let's see. Michael Duchesne. Hello from Central Illinois. Good to see you, buddy. Let's see here. Alcahutek. I have to look at the flowers when looking at alligator weed and water willow to tell the difference. But that's absolutely right. Al is right on the money. As a matter of fact, this alligator weed right here came from your lake. Chad brought this to me yesterday. Chad's been working on bushy pondweed over there at Lake Gilby. And he brought this alligator weed straight from there. And alligator weed doesn't have blooms on it like the good stuff does. So when you're looking at water willow, they've got some pretty cool little flowers on them. Let's see. Leo says water pennywort. Yep, that's right. You drink that health drink. Okay, you got to explain that to me. I got to get it. Chris Volkers, systemic or bust. Well, that's talking about how to treat aquatic plants. Chris Volkers makes great fertilizer. Yeah, you know, these aquatic plants do make good fertilizers. Let's see. Fred Bingaman joined. Hey, Fred, good to see you. Holy cow, this is going crazy here. Nate Herman says, you got a bunch of ranch or blue cheese dressing to go along with all those greens? Yeah, I do. I do. Actually, I love ranch dressing. And you know what? I picked Debbie up. I had an appointment in Dallas today, and I met her at a Thai restaurant, and they had lotus chips. What? Where they take lotus roots, lotus tubers from China, slice them really thin, and fry them. Dude, I'm going to go find some American lotus, pull the roots up, clean them really good, and see what they taste like. I'll let you know how it works. Leo says water shield. We talked about that. John Fitzgerald, Filamentous algae. Yes, we talked about that. Joel Hagenswold. What to do for a pond taken over by coontail? Is it a lost cause? Probably 60 to 70% covered. You know what? No, it's not a lost cause. Now, this time of year, you got to be really picky. I want to talk to you more about that here in a minute. Fred Bingaman, fresh from having 2 arteries stented. Well, Fred, I'm glad you're doing that because it's going to give you better circulation and you can get out there and be fishing a lot faster. I'm going to make it a point. I told Nate a while ago I'm going to come see Nate sometime this summer because he's invited me so many times. I'm starting to feel guilty about not getting there. And I want to come up and see you and Connie as well. So we're going to make a road trip. I just got off a road trip. I'm ready to go on another one. And we'll come up and say howdy to you. So now, what to do for a pond, Joel Hagenswold, taken over by coontail? Is it a lost cause? Probably 60 to 70% covered. No, it's not a lost cause. Now, maybe a lost cause for this year. But I don't remember how big your pond is, but there are some things you can do over the winter and early spring to take out that coontail. Now, here's the catch, guys, is if a pond is 60 to 70% covered with coontail, that didn't happen this year. That's because it's happened over 3, 4, 5 years. So part of your job is to identify what you have and then recognize, is it good? Is it bad? if it's an invasive plant, deal with it early, then we're not having this conversation. You know, Joel, if you guys could have looked in that and understood what it meant 3 or 4 years ago, then you could have taken some action then and gotten rid of it. You know, Coontail, for example, since you brought that up, Coontail reproduces by fragmentation and seeds. It's not rooted. Coontail grows in the water column. I've seen Coontail living in water 20 feet deep in the top 3 feet of the surface. And it moves with currents and wave action. And anytime you run your boat through it, you chop it up, you're going to create new colonies of Coontail. So the more you can learn about these plants, the better you can learn how to deal with them. Let's see, Jim Liner, should I use copper sulfate to kill my shore algae? This time of year, I'd say no. But if you want to kill shoreline algae at other times of the year, copper sulfate is okay, except in areas where the water is acidic. Acid water, and you use pure copper sulfate, you can kill fish. You need to use an algicide that's a chelated copper. Somebody help me get a contract with these guys for this water. Looks like Jeff Patterson's checking in from Whitesboro, Texas. Jeff is one of those guys that pulls the plow. I mean, he is out there every day. He's a firefighter, grew up here in our little town, and is just an outstanding citizen. Got some great kids, a great life. So glad Jeff's here. Jason Knepp said, I was thinking to breed a pair of bluegill in a 55-plus gallon aquarium. Do you think this would work? And how about baby fish? About how baby fish? No, it's not a good idea. Now, it's good for an experiment. And if you want to get the kids involved, like your next comment, then yeah, you can do that. Now, whether those bluegill will breed or not, that's kind of suspect. If they do, and you get fry, keep in mind that the little bitty baby fry have no body fat. They got to have food, and they glean their food from the water. So if you're going to do that in a 55-gallon aquarium, you better be ready to feed them something and then deal with your water quality. You know, nature's job is to have those fish reproduce out there, not in here. Now, you know, to get the kids involved, I think that's a great idea. But if you're expecting results, don't expect any results. Let's see here. John Fitzgerald, my filamentous algae is mild in the spring, but covers almost the whole pond by September. Huh. Okay, and you're in northern Arkansas, as I remember. You know, I don't have a good answer for that. One thing about filamentous algae is the majority of the species of filamentous algae don't like hot water, but there are a few that do. So I think it would be a wise idea for you to figure out and see if it's the same kind of algae in the summertime as it is in the spring. I would just about bet that it's not. Look up Lyngbia, Lyngbya, Lyngbia, or B-I-A. Dick Tabert's got lots of dragonfly nymphs in his Chara. Now that's typical. Now keep in mind that when you have Chara, you've got habitat for something. When the dragonfly nymphs, man, those are very cool, because guess what dragonflies eat? Mosquitoes and small insects. So they're good. Todd Austin says hello. You bet. Stephen Barton, Frank James, you bet. Ken Ziegelbauer, Water Willow, Reagan, yep, Stephen, yep, okay. Let's see. We have Reagan Green says, we have a lot of aquatic plants taking over fishing areas in our pond, possibly hydrilla. Is there any treatment that will get rid of it, or do you just have to physically remove it? Okay, here's the thing there, Reagan, is job one. I'm going to circle back to the very beginning of this video. You got to identify the plant. We can't guess that it's hydrilla. We have to know. You know, I showed some pictures. You can scroll back on the video. I showed pictures of two different plants that look almost exactly the same. One is Coontail, one is Chara. Chara is an algae, Coontail is not. You know, you can't just say, well, I think I possibly have hydrilla. You got to know you have hydrilla. Now, I'll tell you this. This is my 39th year in the pond management business, and I have seen hydrilla in private waters 2 times. 2 times. That ain't much. So that suggests to me that you probably don't have hydrilla. So I would find out what you've got. And then once you figure it out, then you can figure out what to do about it. Like with Coontail, you may be able to go out, if you've got just some colonies of Coontail, you might be able to get out there in a John boat in an afternoon when it's 103 degrees like it was today here, and get a rake and pull a bunch of it in the boat and get rid of most of it. if you do it early on. But if you've got a huge amount, then you need to have a strategy to deal with it. Ian Reynolds, what type of feeder do you recommend? Ian, I absolutely love Texas Hunter feeders. Their customer service is outstanding. The products are great. If you want a feeder, email me. We can help you figure out how to get it. We can take you straight to Texas Hunter. Dion Myers joined. Dusty Allen joined. Frank James, water hyacinth almost ruined my favorite stock tank. Owner decided to save money by fertilizing without liming in a highly acidic pond. Beautiful blue flowers, but within a few months there was very little open water. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Hyacinth is one of those really, really invasive plants. Todd Watts joined from Hurricane, West Virginia. John Krause, our gardening friend who's in Illinois now. Hey, I heard you're going to ride the train, man. That's going to be so much fun. Terry Camp, what's the best way to get rid of water meal? Well, I'll tell you this. Water meal is actually the smallest freshwater aquatic plant in the world. And it's also one of the toughest. So, in order to get rid of that, I think you need to attack it in the spring of the year. And that is one of those plants that's pretty invasive. It can really, really go crazy. Let's see here. Al Cahutek, that plant from our lake is water willow, not alligator weed. Uh-oh. Well, I can't stand being wrong, but Al, you know what? I know what you're talking about. Here's what he's talking about. Let's see here. Steve Lewis from Hot Springs, Arkansas. Okay, Al, you know what? I will concede that. So, sure looks like alligator weed to me. Hey, how important is it to know your plants? Clint Loveday, we have 5 white amur that we stocked in March. Should I cage the plants to let them start? Okay, now see, Clint, dude, why did you stock the white amur? If you stock the grass carp, then you want them to eat the plants. Now, of course, I can't really give you a good answer to that question because I don't know what plants you've got and I don't know how big that pond is. 5 grass carp, if they're in a 1 acre pond, they're going to eat probably 2/3 of the plants, but it's going to take them a year to do that. So should you cage the plants? I don't know. I mean, because once the grass carp are there, gee whiz, I don't know, No, if you're going to be caging plants, then you don't need grass carp. Chris Piper, hashtag Pond Boss. Okay, let's see. Jim Liner, please send my diploma for graduating from the Pond Boss Academy. Jim spent some time on the shocker boat the other day, and we had a great time looking at the fish over at the place that used to be Ray Scott's, as well as Ray Scott's Lake. By the way, go back into Pond Boss Facebook page, and you can see the video, and you can see Ray, who is a true icon of the American outdoors. Reagan Green says, are cattails good or bad to have across your spillway? Well, cattails across the spillway are bad. And the reason is the spillway is designed to allow the lake to remove excess water in an orderly fashion. So if the spillway is blocked and it backs the water up, then the water flows over the dam can burst. We don't want that. That's a bad thing. Now, cattails in other areas are okay. Cattails' job is actually to prevent siltation. Cattail's job is to capture silt and hold it in place near the shore rather than letting it migrate down into the bottom of the pond and become and make the pond silt thin. So, but cattails across the spillway are bad. All right, throw me some more questions. I'm going to take a drink of water. I want to kind of harp on a couple of things about aquatic plants. As you just saw with Al Cahutek showing me, or talking to me about this plant, water willow, I've got alligator weed in my ponds, and the leaves are variegated. And you know what? I think Al's right. So this is actually a plant we like, water willow. So here I am. I do this for a living. Now, I don't deal with plants like I used to because I got guys that work for me that do that. So I've kind of backed away from that. So you can really see how important it is to know the plants. If you don't know the plants, you can't figure out whether they're good or bad or what to do about it. Al just put up a a link to show some pictures. Click on that link and you can see some of the stuff, because alligator weed looks totally different. And the flowers are totally different. So you got to identify the plants. That's job one. And the best resource that I know about is Texas A&M's Aqua Plant website. So let's see, we got more questions coming in. Well, here they come. Let's see here. Dion Myers, does scouring rush have any benefits? I don't know what scouring rush is. I'll tell you this, most rushes are round stemmed, different heights, have seeds in the top or the middle, and they typically grow right along the perimeter of a pond. In that case, I think they're outstanding. Now, what a scouring rush is, I don't really know that plant, so I can't answer that question. Todd Watts says, can invasive plants be brought in by boats? Absolutely they can. As a matter of fact, one of our practices, one of our protocols, when we go electrofish a pond or we go treat a pond with vegetation, is when my guys pull that boat trailer out of that lake, they're instructed to get underneath it. And if there's any plants at all clinging to the bunks or clinging to the axles, anywhere on that boat or on that trailer, they got to get rid of it. And if there's any fragments, they can't launch it in the next lake until they clean it up. So yes, invasive plants can be brought in by boats, and if so, how to prevent? You just got to be wary and cognizant and clean and drain. I mean, the same thing can be said for other invasive species like zebra mussels. You just need to understand just how important it is to prevent a problem. So that's a good question. So he says, Todd says, occasionally I need to run my boat in the river to allow the motor to run. The same question for invasive animals and mollusks. Yeah, in that case, you need to either pressure wash it or allow it to dry out. Now, in the case of aquatic plants, you can transfer seeds. But if you can transfer seeds, so can ducks. Because if a duck eats that plant, transfer the seeds to a pond, you can start growing more. And with invasive animals and mollusks, it's make sure you don't have any water. Zebra mussels, the little veligers, microscopic, they can be in your ballast water. They can be in your live well. It can be even in the lower unit. So you got to clean, dry, and drain. Clean, drain, and dry. Let's see. Alligator weed has a different flower. Yes, that's true. Ken Ziegelbauer, I think you meant flowering rush. Tough to control. The rushes are kind of hard to control, but you also got to understand the habitat for the different rushes. If you know that these rushes are going to grow in water 6 inches deep, it may be better to have them than other plants. There's like giant cutgrass. Oh my gosh, that's one that in East Texas, they can grow up on a shoreline, be 8 feet tall, and completely cut off access to the shoreline. So you need to know what they are so you can deal with them. Frank James, I'd like to get my lake mapped by Pond Boss. Will this include analysis of aquatic plants, beneficial or otherwise? Yeah, we can talk about that. Which Bob Lusk Outdoors will do that, because you called and talked to Justin and Walter, I think. So we can have a talk about that. Yep, when we map a lake, if there's something obvious, we want to figure it out too, and figure out what percentage the plants cover so we can figure out what to do with it. Ken Ziegelbauer says, I think you meant flowering rush, tough to control. Okay, I don't know anything about that plant. Leo Wynn says, is it better to have the plant covers from the edge of the water to 10 feet away from shore within the 1 acre of water, or possibly have a gap in between the plant cover and shoreline? It's kind of hard to have both, because typically most plants, they're going to be growing in water. Of course, most ponds have a slope that goes out into the pond getting deeper. And those plants typically start growing right at the shoreline and grow out whatever distance based on the depth of the water. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to have a gap in between the plant cover and the shoreline unless you have deeper water. Now, some lakes that we design, hey, there's Liz Adams. Hey, Liz, Debbie loves you, honey. Glad you've joined in. Some lakes we design, we will take a track hoe and have a 3-to-1 slope down to about 3 or 4 feet of water, and then we'll dig a trench and then create a ledge. In that case, we can have that gap between, like at Ray Scott's Lake over there, the one they call Red Eagle. You can get out in that lake, and he's actually got some underwater ledges that are 25 feet offshore where there's plants growing on the top of those ledges with a gap between there and the shore. So yes. Jason Nipstad, do you map with side scan sonar? Well, when we create a contour map with Bob Lusk Outdoors, we use straight up and down. But when we're mapping vegetation or we're mapping habitat, yes, we do use a side scan sonar. Lance Farber, you map ponds? Yes, we do. You know, if Chris Blood was on there today, he'd be telling me to be promoting myself. Well, I'm more about getting information to you than promoting myself. But since the question's been asked, you know, part of Bob Lusk Outdoors, part of what we do is I've got a staff of fisheries biologists, business managers, you know, field staff guys. We go out, we'll design fishing ponds, we'll oversee construction. We usually work with Mike Otto to build a lake or a pond. We make sure it's stocked properly, and then we can create a management strategy for you based on your goals and then what your lake has to offer. And part of that is mapping lakes. Chris Piper, what is a good type of reed to plant around the pond edge for extra cover for fish and not bad to look at? I like common rush. I think that's a good one. I like Louisiana iris. I like spatterdock, which is cow lily. I like arrowhead. Those are all real pleasant to look at. Rick Perkins is on board. Christy Hartsley, Christy. Your sister's doing a good job for us, honey. Jurassic Park, thank you for explaining the invasiveness of hyacinth. I work with a lot of ornamental ponds, and that's good to know. Actually, that's where hyacinth comes from, to invade some of these bodies of water, because it started off in the ornamental industry and it's just expanded from that. And when you've got a climate like there is in South Louisiana, South Texas, Southern Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, they can thrive there, and then it becomes invasive, and it just completely blows all the native plants out of the water. Let's see, I've seen hyacinths and yellow flag iris all over Idaho ponds, and I didn't think even how bad it would be not to kill these off. Well, in Idaho, unless it's in the hot water springs area of Idaho, they're probably okay, because they're going to die off in the wintertime except for the seeds, and they come back from seeds. These are the reasons I love the magazine and your live feeds. I have learned so much. Definitely know your plants. Well, I know some of my plants. Al proved that tonight. So thank you for that. Clint Loveday, I guess I have some carp to catch. I took recommendations from a hatchery that we bought the fish from. I found Pond Boss a few weeks after the fact. Now I know better. You know, I don't know that you did something bad. But the thing is if you've got grass carp that are eating the plants, then you need to replace those plants with the right kind of habitat to help you achieve your goals of a better fishery. That's a big deal. Leo says, what is the density spacing in between each plant and plant growth to provide fries to hide from predation within the 30% of the water body without creating a problem? You know, really, Leo, diversity is a big deal. You know, if we've got Chara, if we've got American Pondweed, if we've got bushy pondweed, all three of those plants have different densities, and that gives fish the choices, not that they can think, but instinctively they can go in and they can hide and get the different kinds of foods that they want. There's my son Tylusk. Hey, Tyrone, how's everything going in Phoenix, Arizona? You know, so I like diversity and variety in aquatic plants as long as they're native and not invasive, and they can get along with each other. Now, you know, it's easy for me to sit here in a live feed video at the end of a broadcast and say, I like diversity in the plant life as long as they're not invasive. And like my good friend Cleon Allman says, sounds easy, does hard. Most ponds don't want to allow that to happen. So as a pond manager, part of your job is to figure out what you can do and what you can't do. And that includes the plant life. Mark Lombardi, have you ever added any floating islands to add small fish cover from the roots out to the bottom? Absolutely, I have. I've got several floating islands. Bruce Kanya, Floating Island International. Go look at that, floatingislandinternational.com, and you can see some of the work he's done. So, yes, I do have floating islands. And actually, I mentioned Richmond Mill Lake earlier in the day. They have got some islands of grass. I don't even know what species it is. I've keyed it out, looked it up, can't find it. Where those plants start to grow in the spring, and then they get buoyant, and they'll break loose from the lake bottom and migrate. It looks like Johnson grass. That is the most productive habitat of any lake I've ever seen in my entire life. It's got all kinds of nymphs, grass shrimp, little bitty banded sunfish, which are black banded sunfish in North Carolina, look like little angelfish. Great stuff. Hey, listen, Good show, fast paced. Hey, Al Kahootek, I appreciate you, man. And everybody that's tuned in tonight, I appreciate you guys. And if you don't mind, if you haven't subscribed to Pond Boss, please do. PondBoss.com. Send us an email at info@pondboss.com if you'd like to receive a sample copy of the magazine. It's 7:30. Wednesday's over. I'm going to go share a glass of wine with my wife. Adios. Thanks for checking in.